I'm Dr. Wednesday Martin, and I am an intersectional feminist, social scientist, and storyteller. I have a background in evolutionary biology, most people know what that is, and anthropology, which is the cross-cultural study of human cultures, and also primatology, which is the study of our closest non-human relatives, monkeys and apes. Now, believe it or not, insights about what people are doing in other cultures and insights about what other mammal species, especially our closest relatives, are doing can help us unlock secrets about ourselves. Why do we do what we do? Why do we want what we want? Why do we feel what we feel? Social science has the answers to those questions. The issue is that a lot of the answers about our behaviors and preferences are buried in social science journals, in social science conferences, in very jargony language. So my job is to take those data and take those insights, wrap them up in a delicious wrapper of storytelling and deliver them to regular people so that they have these aha moments about why they're doing what they're doing, why they're wanting what they're wanting, why they're feeling what they're feeling. And for the last 6 years, I have focused exclusively on the social science about female sexuality. So my belief is that social science can really set us free. It can help us feel less weird, more normal, and especially it can help women stop worrying about sex and start enjoying it.
I am so excited to have some of those aha moments that you talked about here with you today.
I think that sexuality in general and female sexuality in specific are just intrinsically awesome. Also, it's just such an evergreen topic. Everybody has an opinion about it, and everybody has a lot of hangups and problems about it.
I really appreciate women like you who are kind of really jumping in and getting involved to really educate us about a topic, which I want to talk to you about. I have so many questions, but a topic that culturally and in our society, and not just our society, but I think just around the world still, we are so still like ashamed to talk about it.
Yes, yes. You know, especially for women, sex is all tied up in danger. And we need to move the cultural conversation so that sex for women is more about pleasure. So from the time you were little, there's a very good chance that you received only abstinence-only sex education. Now, that's a fear-based model of sexual education, or sex ed as we call it. First of all, most of us don't have sex ed at all in school and didn't. Second of all, if we did, it was an abstinence-only model, and abstinence-only models are only fear-based. Be careful because you might be pregnant. Be careful because you might get a girl pregnant. Be careful because you might get an STI. Be careful because you might be sexually assaulted. If we're teaching anything beyond don't have sex, what we're teaching is sex is dangerous, especially for girls. But what's very important is that sex ed also give us an education about the anatomy and physiology and benefits of sexual pleasure and of just the pleasure of connecting. So I see that a lot of our shame and fear about sexuality in our culture comes from ignorance, and that ignorance is deliberately engineered by a punitive, retrograde sex ed culture. So those are the contexts in which sex ed happens, and those things all contribute to sex being especially shameful for women. And then again, there's so much ignorance because there's no sex ed. So we have these ignorant ideas that sex researchers and primatologists and anthropologists have recently debunked. The idea that women aren't visual, they aren't turned on by visual stimulus. The retrograde idea that women like sex less than men and have lower libidos than men. We don't. And the silly idea that monogamy is much easier for women because we're naturally less sexual. All these ideas have recently been debunked by social science, and they're ideas that can set women and men free and help us feel less weird and start enjoying sex more and start feeling more normal. But our ecology is the problem. Our cultural container is the problem.
You said a lot of really interesting things that I want to go over. The first that I want to talk about is that this fear-based approach to intimacy, sexuality is intentional. Why, in your opinion, what is the benefit of keeping us afraid and shameful about our sexuality? And as you said, the pleasure of connecting. What benefit does that provide what group?
That's a great question. You know, in social science, we always ask who benefits from the disempowerment of certain people. Men who want to have sexual privilege, and that means withholding it from other queer people, non-binary people, women, right? All these things are linked. There's always a structure, usually a commercial structure, benefiting from that.
You know, it's interesting because I was peeking at your Instagram and I saw that in your bio, it says that you are a SE percentage mark educator.
That's right.
As a doctor, as a social scientist,
Yes.
are not even able on Instagram to use the
Yes.
word sex.
That's right. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what anthropology can teach us about that, right? So first of all, we have to think of Instagram as an ecology. I step back and I say, Instagram and social media are relatively new ecologies in which we're expressing our identity and constructing our personhood. So you make a very good point, which is that Instagram shadow bans a lot of sex educators and sex researchers and people who talk about sex. Now, that has happened to me many times. I've been shadow banned, but it's a form of coercion, right? It's a form of punishment. So you learn very quickly on Instagram that if you use certain words, you will be punished, you will be taken out of the algorithm. So like women for our entire evolutionary prehistory, I have a workaround strategy, right? This authoritative structure, Instagram, has a very punitive policy. I can't write the word sex, even though I've been studying it for over 3 decades, right? And have an authoritative voice and books and articles about it, but I can't say it, otherwise I will be punished. So I develop a workaround strategy, right? I weigh the risks and benefits. I run a kind of social calculus and I say, there are some risks and rewards if I do this. Let me change that X to a percentage sign so I don't get in trouble, so I don't experience coercion, and so I can connect with people who need this information about their sexuality. Now, we can get into the hypocrisy of Mark Zuckerberg, for example. You know, he started Facebook at Harvard as a way to rate the hotness of women, right? Facebook was a basically sexual marketplace controlled by men assessing women. It was a top-down sexual marketplace. Now, Mark Zuckerberg's very pissed off that women, for example, or queer people go on Instagram. Would it be okay if I were rating the hotness of women? If I were a man on Instagram rating the hotness of women like Mark Zuckerberg did? Mark Zuckerberg, I think, doesn't like that women used this very interesting ecology, right, to try to flip things around and say, well, Facebook might have started as a place where you rate us and create a hierarchy of like prettiest and ugliest and sexiest and least sexy women. But fuck you, now we're here on Instagram and we're going to talk about sex and be the owners of it. So I'm very aware of the hypocrisy that happened, just as I'm aware of how these different ecologies present opportunities for women. And it's kind of like camming. You know, camming is kind of a social media space.
And that's exactly where I want to go, because the camming space, while there are men and women that do it, it is predominantly dominated by women. And
Yes.
women in this space are finding financial freedom and opportunity that they haven't really, some of them had access to before, or even still do not have access to outside of camming in their country, depending on where they are. They are getting financial independence, financial freedom, and they don't even have to leave their house to do it. I mean, it's through technology.
Yes.
And I wonder, it may be a total assumption on my part. In fact, it is, but I would like to know your expert opinion on, is that potentially part of the backlash that these cam models get? Is that part of it? Because they have taken something and flipped the script, as you have said. This is now something where they are being empowered. This is now something where they are gaining financial freedom and taking control of the narrative. However, it's still almost this shameful stigma. What are
Yes.
your thoughts?
Okay, I have some thoughts informed by my training, which is anthropology. So let's step back and look at camming as an ecology. We could call it a sexual ecology, or we could just call it a context, but it's an ecology through the lens of anthropology, where women have certain advantages, but there are also disadvantages. Now let's talk about some of the great things about camming and why so many women have been attracted to it. Now, to do that, we have to do what we do in anthropology, which is look at the context. We live in a culture where there is still a meaningful wage gap between men and women. So some of the advantages of camming: you don't have to leave your home, right? I've spoken to cam girls who have babies, right? And they say, I can shoot myself from the waist up, right? And I have fabulous breasts right now because I'm nursing a baby. And I can do this while the baby is napping, right? I don't have to leave the house. I don't even have to get childcare. And we have this preference for a specific waist to hip ratio in our culture. And the cam girls can take advantage of that and play on that by shooting themselves the way they want. So that woman is just one example of that. And by running their own schedule. Camming is an ecology that allows women to balance their own well-being, their financial well-being, and their own autonomy to set their own schedule and be where they want then, with the well-being of their children. So camming can be a great thing for a mom. I know that's going to sound counterintuitive to people, but I've interviewed cam girls, and this is one of the ways that women are working within this niche to get what they need. We don't have a childcare solution in this country. So camming becomes this space where women create a childcare solution of their own. The second thing I talked about, which is the wage gap. Many women who do camming, many people who cam, will talk about how it's incremental income for them. Now, there are very big success stories in camming of women who do it full time. But many of the people who cam say that it's incremental, almost passive income for them. They come on, they do it for a few hours, and then they go back to another life that they have. Okay, so these are two really big benefits of camming, especially for women. For women, it's a way to close the wage gap, as well as a way to resolve a childcare crisis if they have one. And our whole nation has a childcare crisis. So it's filling these two very huge needs. Third of all, I would say that it gives workers a certain degree of autonomy, right? You get to set your own schedule. You do get to let certain people into the room and others not. You do have a certain amount of control. These are all big benefits of camming to people, particularly women. Okay, now let's do what females as very canny sexual and social strategists have been doing forever. Let's run the calculus, the risk reward calculus. We talked about the rewards. What are the risks? Three very big risks to women in camming. Harassment. It happens to you on the street. It happened to me as a person who taught at Yale. I got harassed and sexually harassed. It happens to women on the job, and it happens to women who are camming. They get harassed. Second risk, tapping, right? Somebody illegally taping you against the rules and profiting from that, or simply not paying for what they're supposed to be paying for, right? So you see right away how there's an opportunity for women to be exploited here. Third thing, doxing, right? We live in a culture that shames women. And if the cam girl, as they like to be called, if a customer feels she's not interacting with him enough, if her angry ex-boyfriend gets word of this, she could be doxxed. Her personal details could be released. I'm not talking about live Jasmine in particular. I'm talking about camming as an ecology, because that's my job as an anthropologist. We have to look at camming as an ecology where there are benefits and risks to the women who participate in it. Let me give you a really specific example. Sometimes I think, oh, I'm 56 years old. I'm working on a new book about, women in midlife and sex. I'd really like some passive income while I do that. Oh, why don't I do an OnlyFans, right? I think this to myself. That would be a great idea. I could get some passive income. Wednesday Martin's feet. I happen to have really nice feet, I'm told. Yeah, why don't I just throw that up there and get some passive income, reward, passive income, and fun. What are the risks? I have to always run the social calculus like the woman that I am, like the strategic sexual and social strategist I am. If I get myself an OnlyFans page, or get my feed an OnlyFans page, I could have fun and I could make money. I could write about it and make money in another way, 2 potential revenue streams. Okay, what are the risks? First of all, I have kids. Are my kids going to get shamed that their mom has an OnlyFans page? Second of all, what's another ecology I live in other than the ecology of motherhood? I live in a quasi-academic ecology. What happens to me if I want to submit an article for publication and the editor knows that I have an OnlyFans page? What happens to me if I go to a conference of sex researchers or anthropologists and I'm not even there to talk about camming or to write about it or to lecture about it? I'm just there to talk about something else. Will I be shamed and penalized? Will it affect me professionally in a negative way if I have an OnlyFans page or if I cam, right? So that I'm just giving you a very specific idea of how every ecology has risks and rewards for women, and women, we're always strategizing and trying to figure out how we can benefit in our ecologies, ourselves, our offspring, our potential offspring, our loved ones.
Looking at live Jasmine specifically, which is more camming, do you think, from your expert opinion, that the members are there just for the sexual content and they keep coming back just for the sexual content? Or is there a deeper reason?
There's a much deeper reason. First of all, I want to say something about camming. We talk about it like it's this new thing, right? But we've always had peep shows and burlesque dancers and go-go dancers who perform for money and are sort of the spectacle, right? And who can profit from it. So camming isn't a totally new ecology. It has historical antecedents. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Okay, why are customers coming to camming? So we might think, oh, it's basically porn. I'm an anthropologist. I have to step back. Also, I have a background in evolutionary biology. I have to step back and say, oh, really? What's really behind these social behaviors? We evolved as what we call a prosocial affiliative species. It just means that we like to be in the company of others. We like to affiliate with others. Why? Because we need it. We're a species that can die without social connection. There is a reason that the worst punishment that you can mete out in our society is solitary confinement. There is a reason that solitary confinement can make prisoners mentally ill, can break them, can destroy them as human beings. And the reason is we evolved for connection. We evolved in a context where we had predators, right? We didn't evolve claws. We didn't evolve big teeth, but we evolved to be in groups. And being safe in a group protected us from predators, right? The group was our safe space. And this is a very deep reason that we still need connection. And that if you banish somebody, if you say, get out of my sight, you're dead to this family, get out, we feel like we're going to die, because in our evolutionary prehistory, we would die if we were alone, right? We didn't have fangs, we didn't have claws, we had other people. Take those away from us and we feel like we might die. We have higher rates of anxiety, we have higher rates of depression, we develop more of a tendency to suicidal ideation in situations where we cannot be affiliative and pro-social, where we're deprived of contact. Okay, so that's me as an anthropologist giving the big context about what is drawing some of the customers to camming. Yes, they want sexual gratification. Yes, they want visual titillation, but they also want connection. And I think it's very interesting that when you talk to people who identify as cam girls or cam boys or cam people, and when you talk to people who identify as sex workers, who might identify as prostitutes, escorts, what they will tell you is that a big part of their work is about connection, and that clients come to them wanting connection. I've interviewed male escorts who say that their female clientele often wants the same thing. They're busy, they have really busy professional lives, they might have kids and they can't date. It might be during a lockdown and they can't see other people. And for all these reasons, camming, especially when we couldn't see other people because other people were literally dangerous for us. I mean, imagine how that messed with our minds, that the thing we need most in life, connection, became potentially lethal. And you can then understand the huge surge of interest in camming. Going there for connection, going there because it's a practical solution to isolation in general, and specifically it's a practical solution to isolation during COVID.
So from your expert opinion, cam sites are providing at the most basic fundamental level connection.
Camming speaks to the fact that we're a pro-social affiliative species and that we need connection with others, even if it's a compromise and it's mediated by a screen. We can find a way to feel connected in circumstances where that wouldn't normally be possible, whether the circumstance is that we have a crazy work schedule and don't have time for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or whether there's a pandemic and we can't connect. And again, I'm going to say, camming is not a perfect ecology for anybody, but it's a strategy that humans have developed to get not just the sexual connection that feels good, but to get a form of social connection that we need for our survival.
Is it possible that sometimes these types of individuals just having a super positive experience and finding a way to get some level of connection, that can help to bridge a gap for them in their lives?
Let's be very clear. Through the lens of evolutionary biology, primatology, and anthropology, connection, sexual connection, and social connection are not the icing on the cake, they're the cake. We absolutely need them. And let's be very clear about something. Through the lens of anthropology, evolutionary biology, and primatology, connection, sexual connection, social connection are therapeutic. We find what we need because we are a uniquely flexible species and we're uniquely resourceful at finding connection where we can. And so for some people, interacting with a cam girl or a cam boy is going to feel therapeutic as well as sexually titillating and exciting.
Have you learned or found it to be true that men in general tend to be more resistant to going to traditional therapy due to stigmas or whatever the case is?
I think there's no question that our society stigmatizes men being in therapy much more than it stigmatizes women being in therapy. So if you're asking me whether men might be more likely to come to camming as a kind of therapeutic practice, I would say yes. And I would also say that when you are having what feels like a sexual connection with someone, when they're naked with you, even if there's a screen, when you're maybe naked with them, even though you're separated by a screen, that is a form of intimacy. And we really don't have enough data yet about exactly how effective that is. But we know that in a pinch, when we can't get skin to skin contact with someone, when we can't be kissing someone, when we can't be holding someone's hand, we know from anecdotal data and data alike that people will seek out substitutes and find satisfaction there. We know that people can find sexual satisfaction and a sense of connection from camming, and that's one of the things they go there for, and it makes sense. The thing about camming is that it hooks into the fact that a lot of us are very used to porn, a lot of us are very used to gaming, and a lot of us want and need, all of us need connection. And so you can see how those three things fit together during COVID to make camming extremely popular. And I think it's going to remain popular, if and as COVID hopefully recedes. It's literally safe. I want to go back to that point I made. The thing that we most need, affiliation, pro-sociality, connection, became lethal for a time, potentially lethal, right? We sought out solutions to get what we needed, and camming is one of those solutions. But it's not just a solution during COVID. It's an overall larger solution, not without its own problems.
Do you see where cam sites could fit in as far as couples who are wanting variety in the relationship but feeling
Yes. I mean, say you have a couple that wants to try a female, male, female, or male, female, female threesome, but they don't feel safe doing it with an actual person, whether it's concerns about sexually transmitted infections, concerns about a pandemic, concerns about catching a cold or the flu, concerns about being socially shamed, concerns about your mother-in-law finding out, right? Interacting with a cam girl can feel like a really novel, and it is a novel experience. And we know that women and men both have evolved appetites for sexual variety and novelty and adventure. Women, I believe, it's my informed expert opinion, that women have more of an evolved need for variety and novelty and adventure in their sexual lives. And that was just because having a range of partners and experiences was beneficial to women's reproductive success. Putting a bracket around that, camming can be a safe and exciting way for couples to, quote, have an experience with another person and reap the benefits of that while reducing the risks that they might feel, whether it's the risk of social censure, STIs, or just time constraints.
I'm curious about your thoughts on what might be happening neurologically to, I'd like to know both the model and the member during a private show.
We do know that when people are in situations of connection, or when people have an orgasm, so whether it's sexual connection or it's social connection that's not sexual, we know that some things happen. When we're looking at somebody else's face, right, we are imitating their facial expressions unconsciously as a way to signal, hey, I got you. We're pro-social and affiliative. It's part of our deep evolutionary software to sort of look at other people's faces and sort of do what they're doing as a way of saying, hey, we're connected. Now that got really messed with when we were all wearing masks, for example, right? And it gets messed with if you can't see somebody. So that now when we do that, and it gets messed with if somebody has a lot of Botox and they can't move their face. I remember reading a study about that leading to anxiety and depression. If people couldn't move their faces, they couldn't be doing a fundamentally human thing for a few weeks, and it messed with them and it created anxiety and sadness. Okay, so that aspect of camming where you can see the person's face, and even if they don't see you back, you're doing that thing, that is beneficial for us sort of neurochemically. The other thing is that when we're feeling connected to someone, whether it's having an orgasm on our own, looking at them when they're live, or whether it's being in person with them and just having a great conversation, is that we have these like a pleasure cocktail, right? Dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, right? And so these chemicals get flowing in a way not just that feels good, but that is a basic precondition for humans to thrive. So that's what I can say in a very basic sense about the neurochemistry of camming, and how people might be benefiting from it, you know, both socially and biologically.
Very well said. I found that fascinating.
There are people who could go into a lot more detail about the neurochemistry of pleasure, but what matters for our purposes is that when people are getting sexual pleasure and when they're connecting and when they have an orgasm, we know that it's beneficial for them on many metrics. It's beneficial for their immune systems. It's beneficial for their sleep. It's beneficial for their sense of well-being. And we even have studies that show that people who have orgasms and satisfying sexual encounters more frequently have higher incomes. So, you know, it's not cut and dried, but there are data suggesting all those things. So we know that sexual pleasure and sexual connection enhance us, give us what we need, and give us many, many benefits. That it confers many benefits to get sexual and social satisfaction. How we create a more sex positive society is we start with sex ed that is not about abstinence only, and we add on a pleasure component. To me, sex positivity is a very simple idea. It's that everyone has a right to feel sexy and to have satisfying sex, as long as it's consensual and no one is harmed, and it's between parties who can consent. Okay, and to also be committed to everybody having the right to do that, whatever your race, whatever your income level, whatever your gender. So that's what sex positivity is. We can't make vast systemic changes in the current political environment, but we can make changes in our homes. So I would urge anybody who really wants a sex positive world to talk to your children in positive ways about sex. Don't just tell girls that they need to be afraid to be pregnant. Don't just tell girls that they need to be afraid about sexual violence. Those are very important things for girls to know about, but it's equally important for them to know that they have a clitoris and that it is absolutely awesome, and that they have an organ that is just about feeling good. Boys don't have that. That's an amazing thing. It's very important for boys not only to know that sex can get them in trouble when they're young, not only to learn about consent, but it's very important for boys to learn that their erections are absolutely awesome, and that touching yourself feels good, and that it's healthy for you. And that if you're having a hard time falling asleep, masturbation is a thing we do in private, but like if you have a hard time falling asleep, Masturbate, it'll help you fall asleep. If you're feeling tired in the morning, masturbate, it'll help you feel more awake, right? There are all kinds of positive messages we can give kids. One of my favorite memes on social media was somebody posted, my daughter came out at a dinner party we were having, my 4-year-old daughter, with my wife's vibrator in her hand and was singing with it like it was a microphone. And the meme was all about the mortification everybody felt and how terrible that was and how hilarious that was. But it's also great because it's an opportunity to just say, hey, you could take her away from the party and say, hey, that's mommy's vibrator. It would be great if a dad or mom said it. That's mommy's vibrator. It's private, but it's to help my body feel really good. I put it on my vulva and it feels really good. It's private, it's mine. When you're older, you can have one. It's amazing, right? So this is the way we can do an end run around a sex negative culture. We can start in our own homes, and we can get in touch with Mark Zuckerberg and say, what the hell are you doing shadow banning sex educators who aren't breaking your rules, who are, people have not been educated about what is sexually normal and healthy, and they do not know the updated science about sexuality. And so people are stuck either in shame and silence, or they're stuck with dated, biased information that is bogging them down.
If you could describe human connection in the digital age in one word, what would it be?
Compromise. Humans are very resourceful at getting what we need. Digital connection is an imperfect form of connection, but we can find some of what we need there. And sometimes finding some of what we need is enough. If we're really busy, if we're in a pandemic, if we don't have a partner and we feel lonely, then we can seek out solutions in the digital world, and we can make them work for us. They're not the same. We don't benefit in the same way, but we get some benefits. And our species has always been about being flexible and finding solutions. And camming fits right in there with what we have been doing as a species for eons.
Absolutely. I mean, we had to adapt when we were evolving and we were a fish and found ourselves on land. We grew legs.
Yes. So another way that I would describe camming or digital sexuality is, I would say, compromise, and I would say adaptation, right? It's a new niche for our social selves and our sexual selves, and we're learning about it and learning from it and experiencing both the upsides and the downsides of it on a daily basis, but it's here to stay. Nobody is going to get rid of camming. Nobody is going to get rid of social media. Nobody is going to get rid of our need as a species to be pro-social, to be affiliative, and to relate to people the way that we can using the resources that are available to us.
Incredible. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for thinking of me. I'm glad that you're elevating it by having experts talk about it. It's really, really important.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I love your mission.